Hello all, welcome to the Solocast of Firecode Tech. In these episodes, it's just going to be me, your host, Gus Gagliardi. There's going to be a range of topics, but I'm going to talk about specific technologies, installation standards, codes and how they work, as well as some other interesting topics that don't neatly fit inside of the context of a normal interview. Hello all, welcome back to Firecode Tech. On this episode, we're talking about carbon monoxide detectors. Carbon monoxide detectors are a complicated part of fire and life safety, so I wanted to speak about the codes and standard requirements around this technology, as well as speaking to when and where these devices are required and how they are installed. Before we get started in the episode, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode and follow us on social media. Also, if you could give us a 5-star rate and review on Apple Podcasts, that would be a huge help. Let's get the table set with some common misconceptions first. Carbon monoxide is not carbon dioxide, which is the relatively inert gas that is sometimes used as a suppression agent. The Google definition of carbon monoxide is a colorless, odorless, toxic, flammable gas formed by the incomplete combustion of carbon. So this gives you some idea in which these detectors are going to be located. But I want to start off the episode with where are these devices located, or when are they required? So like many topics in the fire and life safety code structure of the United States, which is how we've framed all of our discussions so far, we're going to take a look at the International Building Code. In Chapter 9 of the International Building Code, for this discussion we'll be using the 2015 edition. Let's look at Section 915, which is carbon monoxide detection. As we frame all of our code and standard discussions, you need to understand when these documents are applicable. After you've determined the applicability of the building code document, you can look at Section 915, Carbon Monoxide Detection. In this section, you can find where these carbon monoxide detectors are required. Sometimes when I'll be speaking with people about carbon monoxide detection, people will get confused and try to apply carbon monoxide detectors to all occupancies. Maybe if you've had some experience working on Department of Defense jobs, this might be a common misconception. If you take a look at 915.1.1, which is titled Where Required in the International Building Code, you can see that only E, I, and R occupancies have a requirement for carbon monoxide detectors. What do all these occupancies have in common? These are occupancies with a greater impetus for fire and life safety because there might be individuals sleeping or compromised individuals like young children in these occupancies. It's important to think about the baseline methodology for why some occupancies have a greater focus on fire and life safety. Understanding the fundamental fire and life safety properties of specific occupancies is one of the key tasks of fire protection engineers. The specific requirement in 915.1.1 states, when required, carbon monoxide detection shall be provided in Group I1, I2, I4, and R occupancies, and in classrooms in Group E occupancies in the location specified in Section 15.2, where any of these conditions in Section 15.1.2 through 15.1.6 exist. So here's the big requirement for where carbon monoxide detectors and/or alarms are required. 915.1.2, fuel burning appliances and fuel burning fireplaces. Carbon monoxide detection shall be provided in dwelling units, sleeping units, and classrooms that contain fuel burning appliances or fuel burning fireplaces. So if you have a facility with EI or R occupancy and you have a fuel-fired or gas appliance, you need to be thinking about carbon monoxide detection. The other key part of 915.1 through 0.6 is dwelling units, sleeping units, and classrooms. Within these EI and R occupancies, these are the specific rooms and/or spaces that are required to have carbon monoxide detection. Another piece of equipment that will require a carbon monoxide detection consideration is forced air furnaces. 915.1.3 states, carbon monoxide detection shall be provided in dwelling units, sleeping units, and classrooms served by a fuel burning or forced air furnace. So this is a requirement that you'll see mirrored in the Department of Defense requirements for carbon monoxide detection, but also in commercial occupancies, which we talked about, in which we have HVAC equipment that is in use of fuel burning equipment. There are a couple more requirements here for fuel burning appliances outside of dwelling units and private garages, but I want to move on to the location of these carbon monoxide detectors. 915.2 states locations. Where required by 915.1, carbon monoxide detection shall be installed in the location specified in 915.2.1 through 915.2.3. So this requirement is speaking about, okay, so we've determined that we need carbon monoxide detection. Where are these detectors going to go? Where are these detectors and or alarms going to go? 915.2.1 speaks to dwelling units. This section states, carbon monoxide detection shall be installed in dwelling units outside of the sleeping area in the immediate vicinity of the bedrooms. So what that says to me is the carbon monoxide alarm and or detector needs to be placed within the immediate vicinity of the dwelling unit and in accordance with the listed spacing criteria and performance data located on the technical documentation. We're going to get into the standards portion of the application of carbon monoxide detectors here in a moment, but I just wanted to throw that bit of information here while we're on the subject. The next section, when we're talking about the location, so this is a subsection of 915.2 location, and that section is 915.2.2, which talks about sleeping units. This section says carbon monoxide detection shall be installed in sleeping units. And then to caveat that requirement, there is an exception below. And the exception says, carbon monoxide detection shall be allowed to be installed outside of each separate sleeping area in the immediate vicinity of the sleeping unit, where the sleeping unit or its attached bathroom does not contain a fuel-burning appliance and is not served by a forced air furnace. So, as a brief recap, let's talk about the subjects that we've covered so far. We've talked about which occupancies are required to have carbon monoxide detection. That's educational, institutional, and residential occupancies in accordance with 915 in the International Building Code. And then we've gone on to say, in these occupancies, what spaces are required to have detectors and or alarms. So we looked at dwelling units, sleeping units, and classrooms in which we have specific conditions with fuel burning and forced air fuel furnaces. And then most recently, we just finished speaking about in these rooms and spaces specifically, where do these detectors need to be placed? Moving on, let's talk about the standard portion of the codes and standards puzzle. So the codes and standards piece of carbon monoxide detection is a little bit tricky because it's changed over the last decade pretty severely. Starting in about 1993, there was a petition to create a document specifically pertaining to the requirements of carbon monoxide detection. It was originally a recommended practice until 2005, and we're talking about NFPA 720. The name of this now deprecated standard is Standard for the Installation of Carbon Monoxide Detection and Warning Equipment. I'm providing a brief overview of the history portion of NFPA 720. It goes on to state that the numerous revisions of the standard, including some important technical terminology and sort of location and placement advances that were made as the standard progressed. In 2009, the document was completely extracted from NFPA 72. At about this time, the Fire Protection Research Foundation made some discoveries through their diligent efforts in order to determine some better spacing criteria for commercial applications. The 2015 version of NFPA 720 is the last in existence, as they've basically elected to incorporate the requirements from NFPA 720 into NFPA 72. In my opinion, this is a smart decision because a carbon monoxide detector is effectively an initiation device for a fire alarm system, and there are many such systems already covered in NFPA 72. This makes a little bit of muddy waters for incorporating codes and standards because if you're looking at the 2015 edition of the International Building Code, like we are for this discussion, NFPA 720 is still one of the reference codes and standards. But if you're looking at the most recent version of the building code, or if you're looking at the 2018 version of NFPA 72 or the 2022 edition of NFPA 72, you'll find that the carbon monoxide detection requirements are incorporated in Chapter 17, which is initiating devices. So I think that covers it for this edition of the Solocast of Fire Code Tech. But I hope you enjoyed and that you'll tune in next time. Thanks for listening, everybody. Be sure to share the episode with a friend if you enjoyed it. Don't forget that fire protection and life safety is serious business. The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are by no means a professional consultation or a codes and standards interpretation. Be sure to contact a licensed professional if you are getting involved with fire protection and or life safety. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.